Oh, okay, we started. Let's take a little break. Change gears a second. When we go shopping, I'm able to indicate to my mother that I find even the only shopping centre I'm willing to go into and shop, and I got good deals and I got what I wanted for the most part. She does some of my shopping for me because she has to go somewhere that I refuse to go. And because my mother then gets to notice that I have very strong boundaries. And well, I'm happy to readjust my life in both ways. I can honestly tell you that I count myself among perhaps a growing, and very large minority of people on the earth who can be attacked for no reason while going about their daily tasks by women in particular, in any function or profession of the world. Because, get ready for this, they need to. The desire grows. So, the desire grows into with oops, little cans of aluminum start banging. The choice to, if you will, if we call it a choice to live in poverty, is a choice beset with dangers. If you're a sensitive person, of being looked down upon, more easier to criminalize, right? You might have a romantic idea of the opposite sex and people who accept you or, are compatible with your lifestyle anyway, who aren't, and who hurt you, and unfortunately cannot control, though it's not all bad, using you and hurting you. Roommates, landladies. I kicked all of them out of my life. I said to my mom, my mom allows me to be around her and help to develop because my mom was drinking for many years. I love my mom. It's great, but I'm happy to say it's in the past now, honestly. I just get a residual fear about coming home. I come out here and I just get afraid. But in a sense, in a shock, moving through my life, I'm still in shock from things my mother subjected me to over time. And one thing that's come out of it is that I'm very forceful about my boundaries around people who I find threatening, especially since during those years when my home was already so uncomfortable to its indignities outside the home while I was by myself in particular and going about a very peaceful and I think very creative and intelligent journey in life. And not always just females and some of them men, but also men who were working with females due to unwanted detention and persecution and accusation, stalking, and life-changing. Thankfully, almost entirely verbal, but that doesn't mean it's not physical. That doesn't mean it's not sexual. If a man comes to me and stalk me and threaten me physically at all, yell at me to do something that I would find very dangerous to comply with, and ask me to do things that are dangerous and humiliating to comply with, right? Then I'm going to be sensible of that. Right? Particularly, I'm alone, I'm outdoors in nature, I'm completely flushed out and strong, and you're vulnerable like an animal, right? This is where you find out how civil the world really is. When you're to walk away from your home, or 8 hours away, or even walking 8 hours a day in Canada, and you run up to someone who just wants to waste your time, or threaten you, or make unwanted or unsolicited comments, advice, admiration, I don't care. And that, indeed, a man has as much or more to be concerned with from the opposite sex as the opposite sex has to be concerned about men. And when you're by yourself, and I've needed to be, right? How it's made a lot of things harder for me, because it makes me gives me more to worry about. Every indignity takes so long to restore, right? Looks that I've gotten just being in coffee shops, things that have come up behind me and touched me, girls, young girls, even a little older than those ones today, making all those quite unnecessary and unwanted comments about me. But the teacher in that couldn't do anything about it, right? And just an example, just one little profile, little tableau of, imagine if I could go to Ravensong today. This is close to the path you would take up here. Yeah, I don't think I have the time for that, but let's see, what did I say? It was 11 o'clock. We could make nothing but a brief appearance there. It's alright, it's enough to think about it. It's out there waiting for me one day, and I'll feel safe going back out there again. The time will come. Yeah. So you take that and you put that in your database, and it says every time I come to Qualicum, or Squalicum as I call it, Pent Life Cert, right? And today's actually a trilogy so far of strange, unwanted behavior from men or women. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. And so I actually end up, as I'm talking a lot about it, because it's very poignant, right? Do those children talk about all people that way? So they're in an upper class area, at least these people think they're upper class, getting the education, private, expensive public schooling that they're getting. And they're not that well behaved. Right? But the way they do behave is clearly conditioned. Right? It's not scorn. These children are going to need to be aggressive. Right? There's certain kind of people. They come here and they don't realize how exposed I am to them. To me, the sun is so bright because it's so exposed. The sun doesn't hide itself, in a sense, right? If you were hunting the sun, it'd be easy to find. And the people who rule the world, they kind of hunt the sun. It's easy to find. It's exposed. A baby is exposed. The sun of the world is exposed. You can hunt it everywhere. The sun gives us everything. It courses through the blood of all the animals, the insects, all the birds, all the grapevines, all the trees, the sap, power and energy of the sun, of the earth, and of the mother, and of the father, and of the holy child, who is not whole in an empty space to be filled, but rather full unto themselves, that their religions are sacred to everything that fills up the cup of spring. shouldn't be cancelled or killed or tortured by birth, story, or by any of the seen and unknown subconscious measures of all the media in the world. And a good deal of the science as well, as it gets into the practice of some pretty awesome numbers and scales and narratives about the cosmos, your origins, and all these little things that go on in your brain that you use to swing from a tree or eat yak venom or tiger feces until you figured out how to rape your women and kill your children for food. You know, it's just, I don't think so. Evolutionary psychology, it basically validates the idea that anyone can be your parents. So if you don't like being ripped away from your family for the wonderful experience of being schooled by Mr. and Mrs. Chatterbox, then you've got some kind of genetic disorder and you need medication. At core, children should be happy being taken by their parents. So they've been given the most genetic and yet most advanced type of parenting possible. In a surrogate labor cult environment where you have too much being trapped, too much pheromones, too much estrogen, and too much everything knowledge, and too much knowledge, too many buzzers and sounds, and not enough time with your family and with yourself, and with a more hospitable experience of a world that for once understands that it needs to respect your nature, so that like any relationship, if it wants to offset the narcissism and the violent effects of narcissism at a mass scale, if not to every single person themselves every day, to many people inevitably, nonetheless, and all the more, by not forcing someone to give you something that can only be offered if you respect someone's nature enough. Respect my nature, I offer you something. Respect my nature, I offer you something. Respect my nature, I offer you something. More children, probably maybe the same ones, I don't know. At least they're having fun. It stimulates fear in my heart. I couldn't tell you why, but in all honesty, the inner crucible of my heart feels afraid and lonely and insecure at the sounds of these children. That their happiness may be short-lived. Even now, they're being led around by strange women that everyone assumes is the most professional, wonderful people to whom you ever gave the charge of your child. But how dreadfully and lethally wrong it could all be. By no one's fault even but ours, because basically what we do is we launder the cost of our magical thinking and its effects upon the expansion of the often most parasitical nature or leanings of the human mind: lunar, monetary, matrimonial, dark, debt, vacuums of space, cold, you name it. Things that silence the human voice and then get the most out of whatever's left. And so parasitical, in fact, that the only thing positive about it forms a kind of strange didactic vernacular with everything that's parasitic about it. It's actually what is positive about the world in people's minds and is actually made out of the stuff of a parasitical mind. Money. It's made out of your torture, like your language. It's made of conditions of dislocation that now have to be split in two to make something opposite of how bad it could be into something great and good and of God. And it splits up into the neocortex. So you got the red and blue. So you got the ups and downs and the goods and evils of the world now, according to a language that's never going to lead you to the truth. Always going to lead you into conflict. It's always going to force you to satisfy, despite the most laudable aims of any subsequent surrogate family, professional, social, sexual association, or academic relationship in the world. The relationships effectively propounded, though not nearly as much by birth as you might be taught. An identity based on mutual annihilation, just like the good and evil characters in the movies. Right? Achilles and Agamemnon, and even men and women, husband and wife, pitted together and against each other, right? One consuming the other. No one so able that they are Cain and Abel. It's like a cairn for the bull. So, yeah, I guess I work myself from one to another. But it's like, if you were to put it into words, going for a walk and trying to be fully aware of your emotional body. And people will say that, marijuana makes anxiety worse. Well, it depends on listening to your emotional body. Manna breath, the medicine cards that I use is just take a deep breath, hold it, give your body time to sort of get rid of toxins that it couldn't otherwise get rid of, and then breathe them out. So you can hold it as long as you want. There you go. And in a less surreal and conspiracy-laden sense, we are now moving all this poison out of our blood. If it can be converted, the worst theories, the darkest doom, the worst, most industrial compulsions, and inevitable violence to which humans in every group were always bent, and not because they know it, but because they don't want to know anything about the inciting conditions of their so-called adulthood and their adult responsibilities. So, poison. There has to be process to blood. That's kind of how we eat. It has to be digested and expanded. It has to be eliminated. If a dog bites you, you could feel a little sick for a few days. This world bites you like a dog. It holds on to you. And when does it finally set you down? You can be really secure in your prison. And the idea, if you work hard and you pay your mortgage and whatnot, you might say, well, the world's leaving alone. I don't know. I'm not out to make anyone feel bad about their life. Maybe I just feel bad about mine for everybody. I don't like being afraid. I look at everything that makes me afraid. Yeah. Walk around here, there's a man over there just staring at me. It's like walking his dog. It's like they just don't have enough to look at. I was thinking of getting some marijuana, but I think I'm going to skip it. My knees hurt. My knees started hurting as that guy was walking away. I just practicing something. I said, get away from people, get away from people. There's another guy that was like looking at me. I just don't like them. I chose not to like them. And then the pain in my knee went away. It's like a disintegrating factor. My knee is prone to feeling a little tender, so I was like, I'll take care of it. I just like to practice these things, smash bones, and these things. It'll stay away. It was a difficult factor, and there are many other less surreal and probably less provocative theories you might say as to why I feel so afraid all the time. But I'll go back to basics for you, if you will. One, I'm alone all day and I'm by myself. You go out your door in any environment, and if you're lower economically, you can't reach into your pocket and know that you have $50 for a cab if you're living with. You don't have a car, you're walking around, you just got the armor you can wear on your back. And I don't think of it that way because it doesn't protect me of anything other than the rain and the wind and the cold, maybe, and not even that. And you get a cold enough experience of people, it actually takes longer for me to heat my body up when I go home. But on a warmer day, warmer experience, better experience of people. So let's go in here for a second. You don't want to go by these people. I don't know people. And you're by yourself. And it's like, if I'm with my mom, I've been with my mom, and there was a guy that used to walk his dog down here. And the dog was talking to Ruby, and he was okay, and sometimes he looked a little weird. But when I'm with my mom, like, no big deal. Like, when I'm by myself, I feel things more. I feel more exposed. And I bet your children feel more exposed, right? It's easier to influence by yourself or to pull away from the herd or pull away from the family. Like, by myself, as a man, I can't stop people from hurting me. People who walk up to me and waste my time. I was looking at a beautiful amanita one day. Old man walked up to me and said, "Oh yeah, you know what these mushrooms are? Blah 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 blah." Mentioning another mushroom. "Oh, these mushrooms all over my hair. You know what this about mushrooms? I teach my grandchildren. You should tell someone. You should learn this." Okay, thank you. Never once says hi. How are you doing? Pardon me. Or what's the name of that mushroom? What do you know about that mushroom? What's your interest? Nothing. He's not having a conversation. He's just making sounds. He's being dominant. Right? And it's so habitual for him, he can't stop. I just provided him whatever he needed. That's the first conditions. I just looked open, and I was by myself. And these men go through their lives, and they just molest people all the time. They don't think anything of it. I'm like, this is a waste of my time. I don't really care for this. But if you told every person that went up to you, I don't really care for this conversation, unless it's something you were really confident about doing, they wouldn't feel that. It's like people get to come up to you and say weird shit, unfortunately. See how that sun is covered up. See that? And it's so common, for people to have, close, problematic relations with their old one or both parents or step parents. The way that I like to generate the money the most, and both of how it's gone hard, is ways that honor my mother very directly and make sure that she benefits in every way. It's needed over the last several months. I haven't really had to make any videos going. I'm really, really angry and my mom is hurting me. Over the last 5 years, that was sometimes quite a daily thing. I get to the point where I just burst. It's like, oh shit. I'm trapped in a home with someone who's hurting me. I'm walking all day and coming home, it's just like, and I'm getting sick and I have to go to the hospital. Oh, what a discordant environment this is. If you really critically listen to children's minds, are quite scattered. I'm sure they're pleasant in many ways, but it's gonna sneak in behind you. This old man and I kept running into each other at supermarkets, and when I was going to get something, there he was. I was like, I just said, let's go the other way. I think I saw him one more time before I left. Children, this one girl dressed in red, tight blue jeans, and they know they fill out those blue jeans pretty quick. It's pretty confident, standing right. It's okay. It's a feeling. Different children branching off into different groups. So there's 3 or 4 distinct groups. The 2 girls off by themselves, the girls with the boys over here, the boys and girls over there, all breaking off into their various little groups for lunch, I guess. today will be a good day. Good day. Good day. Good day. So I get my children. Ooh, get that knee moving nice there. Tracks. Oh, for a second. Oh, yeah. That's a raven. Two ravens. Right above me, two is completion, safety. Yeah, it is. Safety, safety, safety. That's the key. To feel safe. And then to have enough, one, not saying should, but you have to have enough to think about in life. It's about giving you enough to think, surely giving me enough to think about every day. I might as well be in prison. Where I'm imprisoned in fear of those illusions. And it seems to be like a process one can come in and out of it throughout one's life. If you've ever felt violence, you've been imprisoned by the illusions of others, in a combination of projection of problems related to the conditions which incited all these types of other now effectively predatory associations, that none of these associations, however righteously often, especially think they may be, in their projections upon thee, never solving the conditions that have brought them into this type of relationship in the first place. And I think out of the realm of conspiracy, if someone has experienced violence, I'm not an expert, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a professional, but I offer